All right, so now we've got to the point where we can start doing some electrical and getting some lights hooked up. And it's pretty dark in here, so I do apologize. You'll notice it is pretty dark. I got one light going behind me. We've got one box mounted on the ceiling with a wire coming out. We're going to connect the other boxes with some conduit, put the receptacles in, and then we're going to go ahead and turn the lights on. And we'll have half of the lights. The ceiling here, beside me is not done yet. The other half will go there. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we're going to go through getting those lights going and probably continue on and get the smoke detectors done once we get the ceiling done. So what we're going to do now is we got to mount 2 more boxes. One right about there, and then one down right about there somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. We don't really have to measure them because what we've done is we've actually figured out a line in the V-match where they line up, so we can get them nice and straight. So we're going to figure out where we want the next one. We're going to cut a piece of conduit and get it mounted up there. And again, because it's not absolutely critical, we're not bothering to measure anything. We're going to line it up with that light. I'm going to cut the conduit right about there. I'm just using a hacksaw. You could use a sawzall, skill saw, pretty much anything, but this PVC conduit cuts pretty easy. You'll see I'm using a regular hacksaw. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that piece of pipe so we don't step on it and take off across the trailer. Still working on the trailer deck. The other thing we're going to do too is this pipe has a bunch of writing on it. We're going to put that writing up, just make it look a little neater. So there's our conduit in. We're going to get a couple Torx-headed screws. And we're using these boxes. And I'll show you this a little bit more here as we get going. I'll bring you along for the ride while we wire up the receptacles and whatnot. Now we have a handful of 2-hole straps. I'll show you what those look like. We're going to put a few of those on. So let's see if I can get in here and get out of your light so you get a little bit of light on the camera. But that's what the 2-hole strap looks like. It's got 2 holes in it. That's why they call it a 2-hole strap. This goes around the conduit and supports it. There are a lot of rules and regulations around all of this. I'm not going to go through them right here. Pretty much what we're using this conduit for is just to protect the Romex between the boxes. So we're just going to put 3 clamps on. We're going to come out about 12 inches, make a mark. Come out about 12 inches from this one. Now we're going to try to keep them uniform. It will look a little nicer that way. And in between the boxes, I have 82 inches, so 41 inches, and we'll put one right there. So 41 inches, so we're going to need 3. And we'll try to get that conduit as straight as possible. You could snap a line ahead of time if you wanted to, but with this V-match, it's actually pretty easy to get a pretty good idea of where things have got to be. Screws. Yeah, now we're going to repeat that process. We're going to actually take this piece of conduit, get it swung around, see if we can do that without hitting you guys or whacking ourselves in the head. We're going to come on down here and figure out where the third set of lights is going to go. So we're going to go right about there and cut this one off. Pretty much a repeat of the last process. We're going to put the writing up just for cosmetic purposes. Put our box on there, screw it up, and then we're going to come back and put our clamps on. All right, now that we've got all of our boxes mounted, we're going to go ahead and pull our wire through and get ready to put our receptacles in. We'll go from there. I am using Romex. Like I said, this isn't intended to be necessarily code compliant. You can use like THHN, single strand conductor, if you wanted to be more code compliant. Kind of the same thing. I'll show you when I get a little closer, but stripping this out, I use my utility knife, and on this Romex it's pretty easy to do if you're careful. And then I have my T-strippers. I like to cut them off about 6 or 7 inches down like that. And then you find the right notch in your T-strippers to strip the insulation. And there's a little hole, which I'll show you a little bit here. Show you close up. It's a little hole that's used to bend the loop to go around the screws on the receptacles. A lot of the receptacles have what we call back stabs or stab ins. There's little holes on the back where you can push your wire into. We really don't like to use those, or I don't, because I don't get a good mechanical connection. I've seen those fail. I've seen those get hot. I've seen things melt. So I just kind of old school. I like to use the screws on the receptacle. And I'll show you a little bit more about a receptacle here in a little bit once we get some light. Let me go ahead and do this. And then I'm going to put our cover on. Get that out of its package. This one has, the screw is captured. See if I can get you a picture of that. Right there, you'll notice there's a little black thing on the screw. There you go, you can see it right there. That actually holds the screw from falling out of the faceplate, so we can shake it upside down. Some of those, the screw will be in the bottom of the bag. So when you're opening these, look for that and just be kind of careful that you don't lose that screw. Because once it hits the floor, it's really hard to find again. And you want to be careful how tight you tighten these. A lot of these covers are breakable. You can get unbreakable ones. And just kind of a nitpicky thing of mine, but when I'm doing a cover with more than one screw, I like to keep all of my screws in the same orientation. I tend to go all side to side, but there's no code, no issues, no safety issues. It's just how I tend to do it. So now what we're going to do, I'll give you a recap of this in a little bit. We're going to use a couple of these conduit straps to run our wire from our light to make it nice and neat. So we're going to go ahead and get, I grabbed the wrong drill. There we go. We got the right drill now. I'm going to go ahead and put one right there. Actually, we're going to come back here a little bit because we have a piece of trim going there. We want to leave ourselves enough room to get that piece of trim in there. And then what we'll do is once we're happy with it, we're going to go ahead and wire tie the slack right here after we plug it in. So we're going to grab one wire tie and our side cutters to trim the wire tie with. And we're going to go ahead and figure out exactly what we want to do here. I think we do something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the slack back through the hole on the conduit adapter. 2-hole strap. Something like that. I think that's just what we're going to do right there. I'm not even sure I'm going to wire tie that. That actually stays pretty good. So we would have actually, if we'd have known we were using these lights, we would have actually run the wire in the ceiling and put a box at each location. We were actually planning on using a different type of light that had to be hardwired. And due to COVID, there's been a high demand for them or low supply. We've been unable to get those for a good 3 or 4 months. So we've gone with these. They came from Costco. We're pretty happy with them. They give off a lot of light. So you guys will see in a minute here, just like we will. Be the first time this is lit up. So we've stripped this one wire out. I got the black and the white in the ground. And we're going to strip this one out. And what I like to do is I like to take my utility knife, my finger on the end like that, and I keep my hands together so they both move together. So if I slip off the wire, I'm not going to cut my hand. And then I like to get right in the center on top of the ground wire, so I know I'm not going to hurt the jacket, and just lightly score that plastic insulation. You'll see how it's riding right down the middle like that, nice and gentle. And I know I'm not getting into the other insulation because I'm right into that paper on the ground wire. And if you do end up nicking the wire and you can see bare copper on either one of the other wires, you really need to stop and replace the wire or tape it up, make it safe. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 ground wires, we're going to hold them overlapping with each other like that, and we're going to take our linesman's pliers and we're going to actually just twist them together and make a mechanical connection, just like that. And I'm going to cut one off and leave ourselves a single pigtail, like that. Now we're going to trim these 2 as well. And we're going to start, like I was telling you about the T-strippers, you'll see there's a hole in them right there. Right there. That's to bend the little curl. I'll show you here on the ground wire. We're going to get that in the hole. And we bend it 180 degrees, and that gives you just the right spacing for that to fit on your receptacle. Okay, we're going to keep going. All right, so we're on our last receptacle. I want to give you a little bit of a rundown on the receptacle, explain a few things about it, just what's going on here. So we've already stripped our wires, as you saw, put our loops in the end of it, which is a little hard to see on the video there. On the receptacle, on one side, see if I can get you a good picture of that, you're going to have these silver screws and a green screw. So the green screw is where the bare ground wire goes. The silver screws are where your white wires go. Those are your neutrals. On the other side, you see you've got brass or gold colored screws. Those are the AC hot. Now I want to point out, if you look at the receptacle in that picture, this side over here is the side with the neutral. And you'll notice that the hole in the receptacle is bigger, a lot bigger on the neutral than it is the hot one. And the reason for that is that if you have a lamp or a fixture appliance that's metal, a lot of times that neutral, that wide one right there, is actually connected to the frame. So say you had an older lamp and it was metal lamp, and it's got a pull chain on it. That metal is going to be referenced to that neutral right there. So if your plug or your receptacle is wired wrong and you feed the hot to the wrong side of that lamp, that whole metal frame now becomes hot. If you grab the frame and you're touching like a cast iron radiator or something metal, or got any kind of ground, you're going to get a severe shock or possibly even death if you're grounded really well. You'll notice on the plug, let's see if I can hold that plug correctly, that this prong right here is a lot wider. See if I can get you a good picture. There's a pretty good example. So basically, when you're trying to plug it in, if you will, it doesn't, let me see if I can get you where you can see what I'm doing here. Right there. So you'll see it doesn't plug in. If I turn it around, it plugs right in. So what that's doing is that's making sure we keep the correct polarity to the appliance. Most modern equipment will have a ground plug on it. Or if it's only got two prongs, it's considered isolated or double insulated, if you will, so there are no faults. This is usually only an issue on older appliances. So if you've got an older lamp in your house or something like that, this is where this becomes real crucial. But just always remember, the silver screws, green screw are on the same side. Silver screws are your neutral, or the bigger of the two is your neutral. That's something important to remember. And you'll notice I'm using my little drill. You probably should use a screwdriver to tighten up the wires. This drill doesn't have much power. I'm pretty comfortable with this. I've done this a lot of years. I know just about how tight to tighten these without breaking something. But if you're new to this, you definitely want to be using a screwdriver and feel that torque. We're going to put the ground under the green screw. And we're going to put the two whites under the silver screws. We're using 12 gauge wire here because that's what the circuit started out as, and you have to stay the same. So this circuit is fed by a 20 amp breaker, so we're using 12-2 Romex. If it was a 15 amp breaker, we could use 14-2. 14-2 is a lot easier to bend and move around, but we tapped off in an existing receptacle to do the lights because they're going to be very low power. This is an addition, so we had to get power out here for the lights. And when we cut the door in, we had to cut the wire for the string of receptacles in the shop, and that's where we got the power for the lights from. The good thing about that is they are now on our backup power supply as well. So we'll be doing some videos about the power system in the house coming up pretty soon. We're having to do some expansions for some of the new Midnight products that's coming out, so we can do some testing. So we're going to be we think we're going to be building a power shed to move all the solar equipment into, and we'll give you a rundown on how everything works there. Basically, in a nutshell, most of the house is backed up by a large battery-based system. Then we sell our excess to the utility grid. And like I mentioned earlier, we kind of want to try to accordion these wires up in there. This is much harder with 12-2 than it is 14-2. And if I cut my wires a lot shorter, this would be easier. But if I ever have to work on this again, I won't have enough wire to do do anything. So we're basically going to get the receptacle to fit up there snug like that. We're going to make sure our ground wire is not touching anything bare, and then we're going to go ahead and put the screws in. And I did have a couple issues sourcing materials for this job. You may have noticed if you had a close eye that the two boxes I used on the end have a fitting on either end of the box instead of just a single fitting. That's basically because that's all they had. PVC products right now at my electrical supply house are in short supply, high demand. Prices are starting to go up. So that's what we used, and they did not have the gray PVC covers, so we're just using the ivory covers that go on the regular receptacles. They work pretty good, you know, and because this is on a ceiling, upside down, inside a dry space, I'm not at all worried about it. It's not needing to be waterproof, so. All right, so that's finishing up the electrical. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our last two clamps on for the wire. We'll bring you along for that here. There, so we're going to go ahead and jump down off the trailer. We're going to unplug our temporary work light, and we're going to give you a shot of what this looks like when the lights come on. So hold on, we'll be right back. All right, probably going to be a little hard to tell just how dark it is in here. I'm going to try to get you a shot like back that way. A little deceiving because the camera picks up a lot of light, but it's pretty dark, especially back in that corner. Now we're going to turn on the light switch and see if they actually light up. There you go. So we have light, or half the lights anyways. So as I mentioned, I'll give you a little rundown. What's going on here is this box here is where the wire drops out of the ceiling. We got our first light there. We'll end up with another light right over here, right across from it. And then as we go down, we got our next two lights. And we're going to have the same thing. So basically we're going to have a total of 6 of those lights in here, evenly spaced down through. And we think that's going to be more than plenty for general lighting. And then we'll end up probably putting something over like the chop saw, maybe another one over the table saw if needed. Any place we have a specific workstation that we think we need more lighting, we'll go ahead and address that then. But as you see, we've got the trailer. We got all the boards moved on the trailer. We're ready to get going again on our V-match and try to get this finished up. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up. We're going to get the V-match finished. And then we'll come back and wrap up the smoke detectors, and we should be in pretty good shape. So thank you for watching. Leave your comments down below, questions. We'll try to answer them. Like and subscribe. Thank you.